All right, good evening. Welcome to the City of River Falls Municipal Utility Advisory Board meeting for Monday, September 18th, 2023. Lene, can we have a roll call, please?
Bartles,
Present.
Carroll,
Present.
Gerald,
Present.
Blick,
Present.
Klecker,
Present.
Toom,
Here.
Wells Mangold.
Here. All right, looking for an approval of the minutes from the UAB meeting on our last get-together on July 17th. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the minutes are approved. This is the time in our meeting for public comments. Any public comments, please come to the podium. State your name and share your address.
Good evening. Oh, that's right in my face. My name is Patricia LaRue. I live at 49 Marcella Court. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a resident who over the years has strongly advocated keeping our hydroelectric dams and continuing generating the clean, reliable, renewable energy. I show up here probably twice a year, sometimes more, going all the way back to 2015. I will also put out there that my husband was a hydroelectric operator for over 17 years, having retired just last week. I want to comment on the developments of our partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. Per the City Council's 2018 resolution, we all agreed to renew our FERC license on both dams. Over the past 7 years, the ratepayer taxpayers have paid over $600,000 to relicense Junction Falls Dam and over $200,000 decommissioning Powell Falls with removal. The requested license for the Junction Falls Hydroelectric Dam is for 40 years. You may hear from sources that Junction Falls Dam is old, or more specifically, 100 years old. That's a misrepresentation. Junction Falls Dam was fully reconstructed in 1990. The reconstruction cost about $2.5 million in today's money. Junction Falls was built expected life expectancy of 75 years, which was only 33 years ago. The expenses of reconstructing the dam have not been fully depreciated. When our license is renewed, it will cover hydro generation until 2063. The dam has a life expectancy to 2065. All of this has been paid for by the taxpayer and the ratepayer. If the city supports tearing out Junction Falls Dam years ahead of time from the resolution, it comes with modifying or replacing Winter Street Bridge, the pedestrian bridge, and Maple Street Bridge. It requires us to reconstruct our stormwater outputs. In addition to those construction costs, we will lose the revenues from hydro production, we will lose valuable renewable green energy, and we will lose Lake George, together with the diversity of having both a river and a lake just steps off of our downtown district. Let me quickly mention here, the trout are not endangered. The Kinney is a Class 1 trout stream all the way through River Falls, including the portion it skirts Lake George. And nobody is scraping dead trout from the Junction Falls grates. It has always been portrayed to the public that the revenues from the hydro generation will repay the costs of relicensing and Powell Falls decommissioning. That's rather hard to do when the one operating dam is torn out. Removing the sediment from Lake George will make it deeper, cooler, and maybe put in fountains or surface aerators to make it better. I've been told many times that removing the sediment from Lake George would be very expensive. But when I ask how much, nobody seems to know, just that it's expensive. So is tearing out a dam, modifying 3 bridges, reconstructing our stormwater outputs, and losing thousands of dollars of revenue annually. So if the consultants and staff don't know the cost of removing sediment, how can we compare that with what was described to you in July from the Army Corps of Engineer meetings? Final comment. In the last 12 months, Junction Falls Hydro has generated over 1.3 million kilowatt hours. That energy goes directly into our Winter Street substation and then out to our residents. Residents pay 11.1 cents per kilowatt hours. For 1.3 million kilowatt homes made electricity, that's over $144,000 in revenue. Junction Falls Dam is the greatest source of renewable energy our city generates. Generating renewable energy is to everyone's benefit. It's your wheelhouse. I would expect a community-owned utility with a community-owned and operated hydro facility, which is very rare, would be something to be proud of. As a commenter tonight, I can theoretically ask questions, but I cannot expect answers, and I respect that. But I am wondering, and I haven't heard anyone ask, what the status is with our FERC license. I contacted the FERC, and understandably, they aren't at liberty to discuss with some random grandma from River Falls the status of their process. But I think if our utilities asked them what the holdup was, that information would be passed along. And I appreciate us trying. It's kind of a $600,000 important question to me. I do want to thank you for your time and for all the work you guys do to keep the utilities fiscally operating. I do watch, and I know you do work. I know you do your homework, and you come prepared, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. Any other public comment tonight?
Kellen, if you would like, I could give a FERC hydro.
That'd be great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question, and I was going to get to it later, but since Patricia's here. So the license did expire on August 30th, but they give us a continuing annual license now. The FERC has every bit of information from the utility that they need, including studies and information. They're finalizing their water certification with the Wisconsin DNR. I was on a call today with the DNR, and they said they're just finalizing their last comments with FERC on that piece of the relicensing. To be honest with you, I believe we're just not a high priority for FERC, and that's why they've let this lapse and not have given it the attention they need. But they have everything they need from us. It still could be 3 to 6 months before we get the final license, but it is still progressing.
All right. Moving on in the meeting to the consent agenda and the acknowledgement of the meetings from the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Commission from July 20th, August 17th, and August 30th of 2023. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Discussion on the consent agenda? I actually had just a couple things. So I was reading this, and it looks like there's like I was trying to go through the progression with the loan. It looked like if I was reading it right, it looked like one bank backed out,
That's
and then
accurate.
another bank said maybe
Yes.
ish.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yes,
right?
that's accurate. So, what was the name of that first
Since
bank?
we're still like part of this with the 0.5, like we're wrapped up in that. Are they backing out because we have decided to go in a different direction? And then I had one more quick thing. It looked like Mondovi was asking for another year extension. Is that again because they're trying to figure out where they're going with?
Yeah, and I think Mondovi, they're doing some work at their plant, so they just were asking for one more year. So that was the reason they want one more year to get their work done. So I was just Midwest One was the bank, yes. So they were gonna. So there was. I'll just give a little brief overview of the minutes. They kind of came late, but I like filling in these blanks anyway. So there was 5 banks who gave an initial offer to loan on phase 0.05. Midwest One had the most aggressive interest rate, and the board said move ahead with Midwest One Bank. As Midwest One Bank examined the loan, they had a bunch of requirements that included each community to pledge their selves to the loan, and it was going to take more time than was available.
That was my other question, because
yes.
it said the Biosolids plant would take the loan versus the communities. Is
Correct.
that what they were trying to figure out?
But as part of their loan, they needed more community involvement in that loan guarantee. from what I understand from Ellers, who was there that day. To make the long story short, what they needed probably could have been done, but it would have been very time consuming, maybe another 6 months. So they're out. And then Sean Lentz from Ehlers was there that day. He took the remainder of the available agencies who offered to help with the loan and called them all. And Bremer Bank stepped forward and said, we can do the loan. They had a couple conditions that I put into the minutes, including an appraisal and an environmental assessment. And I saw Sean last week here at the city council meeting. I said, how is that progressing? He said, very well, just in passing. So it looks like they're going to get it done with Bremer Bank. Another fair question is, how did the West Central Biosolids get to this point where the project is underway and do not have the funds secured? That's a very good question. Donahue and Associates, there were the main contractor and engineering firm for this project. They also took it upon their expertise to help with the loan, and I think they thought it was going to be easier than it ended up being. And they got down the road, and no one's hitting the panic button, but I think there's a kind of an uncomfortable situation where the West Central Biosolids is paying that contractor with cash. That was part of the plan, to pay about $2 million out of reserve fund, but that eventually will dry up. Then they're waiting on the $1.6 million for the federal grant, but it's pretty imperative that this loan gets done in the next 30 or 45 days, which I think is going to happen.
How much longer are we tied to this?
2 years.
And then last thing was like looking at the distribution contract. They were upping the amount by up to $1 per ton.
Yes, and that's, so the CPI index is built into the transportation costs. Part of the contract, so it was like 3.41% or something like that. 3.42. Yes, so that's an annual, and then and it's not just a general CPI; it's a regional transportation CPI. So they look by regions, so they go according to that. So that's built into their costs.
Is that spread out across, and each community just pays whatever their tonnage
yes, so
is?
That's 3.42%, and then every community pays 3.42% more of their.
So just if you were to extrapolate, like traditionally, what River Falls has done, let's say last year, since last year is complete.
Yeah.
If it goes up 3.42%, what does that cost in like real money?
If it's $100,000 for transportation, you can do the math on that. I mean, 3% of 100,000. No, 30,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a cost to that, and so that has been that. This isn't. I will say this: there's Synagro is their new hauler, but with the previous hauler, Porcupine, they had the same escalators with this cost CPI index in the contract.
And then when our facility is done, we don't have that shipping cost. We don't have
that cost for transportation. That's one of the big pluses. When we move to our own drying facility, we will not have the transportation costs. We will not be hauling water from here to Ellsworth and Ellsworth back to here.
So just like, okay.
That's a big savings right off the top.
All right.
Transportation.
All right, I'm done. Sorry.
No, those are good questions, and I like talking about that. So.
Does anyone else have any comments about the consent? We should probably just not call it a consent agenda anymore. Sorry.
There were a few questions offline from Mr. Lick that were very similar to your questions, so I'm glad you asked those.
Well, the loan thing was just concerning, especially since we're stuck for right now. Maybe stuck is not the right word. Sorry if that causes an issue.
Maybe it's not even right. It's just, the fact that we have 2 years left, I'm concerned about it, but I don't feel quite the pressure as some of the others feel. Probably.
Okay. Does anybody else want to say anything about it? Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is approved. Moving on to new business item number 3 is the resolution recommending approval of Winter Street cable installation project.
Yes, Kellen, we do have our electric superintendent, Wayne Seiberling, here to give you a few sentences about this project. This is a project from Maple Street out to Powell Avenue. It's about 3,600 linear feet that we will be putting 750 MCM cable, and I'll just give a graphic. That's big cable, like that big, in the ground, into existing conduit that we had placed in the ground. What was that, two and a half years ago, Wayne? 2 years ago?
2019 already.
No way.
Yeah.
See, there's the COVID years that just kind of get extracted from your mine. So the conduit's in the ground, and we're pulling this cable into that existing conduit. Wayne, go ahead and talk about the project more.
Correct, yeah. Kevin gave the highlights. This company that is on the docket tonight for recommendation to the city council is our directional boring contractor that's been working with us for the last, it'll be 3 years now. The other companies, as you can see, we're hard to get a quote out of them. Finding more contractors is getting more difficult to get quotes on the utility side. A little concerning. They're having problems finding help as well. But this project is to help tie in our power plant and our north substation infrastructure together to help the west side of the city stronger foothold with the local residents and the future of the west side endeavors in Man Valley. So this will continue the route to tie north sub and power plant together. Kind of the highlights, we'll have to do some customer contacts and make sure customers in the area are aware of our work and the timeframes that are needed to finish this project. Anything else?
I was just going to add 2 things to that, just to put a little icing on that is, so this year we'll be out to Powell Avenue along Winter Street. Next year, we're going to go from that intersection at Winter Street and Powell Avenue out to Radio Road and Powell Avenue. At that point, we will be able to feed all 3 of our major corporate parks in from 2 different substations, both power plant sub and north sub. And that was the ultimate goal with this redundancy, that it's going to add some great redundancy for our corporate parks and another great feed to Man Valley.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then customer notifications, not only will we be notifying the customers individually by letter, but then Wayne and his crews will be working with follow-up to make sure we do restoration of any lawns and yards and front approaches. So.
The idea is our team to working with their team, make sure this project goes off with the best possible results as possible for the interruptions in the neighborhood.
So Wayne, the conduits were in the ground, but no cabling were initially put in the conduits. They were
Correct.
in there for the planning for this.
Correct. Yep.
And we have purchased this cable, so we have it's over 10,000 feet because it's 3 phases. It's 3,600 linear feet, and that cable is $36 a foot. So this is mid $300,000 worth of cable that's going in the ground.
So
when do you expect to have the project complete?
hopefully this year. But the timing, as everyone sees, it's a lot of things going on. The object is to get it done this year. We'll do our best to make sure all the ground and groundwork restoration is taken care of. There might be some finishing touches after the first year above ground, some finishing connections we can make during the winter that will finish the project. But idea is get it in the ground, get the basements and equipment set and restoration, and then our team can work on it when we can with the other projects that the city's working on at this point.
Yeah, so Wayne, your team will be taking the ends of these cables and then terminating them and putting them into the switch cabinets.
Correct. Yep. So there's a few days, a couple weeks of working on that. That takes time with terminations and setting equipment restorations. So, and then energizing it and making it part of the grid system, so that helps the local residents.
You said that getting contractors to respond to bids or proposals, what's going into that? Like, why is it more difficult to get responses now? Is it just overall
There's so
activity,
much
cost
work
prohibitive,
so
a
much
lot of
work
things
out
going
there.
on?
Yeah, there's just
So
a ton of
the
work.
contractors are just being selective on what they can.
Yeah, to be more or less frank, yeah, they are being selective at times, yeah. So, or they work a certain area of the state and they don't want to come from one area of the state to this area. So that's a concern too.
This is a big project, but probably wouldn't be a high dollar project for them.
Correct. Next year's projects are more of a value to them than this year's projects at this point,
Got
to be frank. So, if there's any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so looking for an approval for the resolution. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Resolution passes. Moving on to new business item number 4 is the resolution recommending approval to purchase generator for the wastewater treatment facility. Kevin?
Yeah, we have Dean Seamuth here to talk a little bit about this. I'll set the stage for Dean. We have a late 1960s, the joke is the Vietnam area generator in that plant currently today. We had some tune-up done on it recently, and we've been limping it along, and it would be an adequate source for us. But with the new dryer building coming, it will not be an adequate size to feed the whole plant in a major power outage. This has been a CIP item for a while. We have kept pushing out, and then we moved it up with the dryer project. This is a 2024 CIP item. We will not be paying for it until it arrives. It's about a year lag time on this generator. So we won't see this in probably till next August potentially. And then early next year, we will also then be developing some engineering plans to get it hooked up. So we're replacing an old generator with a new diesel generator that'll be able to power the whole plant should there be a power outage. Dean, did I steal your thunder?
Pretty much did it, yeah.
Thanks, Dean.
So, as he
Now you go into the detail. That was this 5,000 foot level.
As you said, this is a 2024 CIP. We currently have $311,900 in our CIP for it. We got 3 bids. The low bid is $217,584. So we're $97,000 under CIP budget. Some of that will be used for actual installation of the project, and we also have another $27,000 in the CIP to do the design work. So, that's my thunder. Everything else on here, Kevin.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Three different. You want to talk about the three different
Yes.
types of
We did-
generators that were bid up?
Yeah, the 3 name brands that we got bids for were Cat, Cummins, and Generac. Lenny got me on generics. You want to know why we were getting a generic generator? Generac is the name brand. I know the school has one Generac, which is what we would go with. That was and there's another one that are for the telecom people that are in there. They have one. It's a pretty reputable generator that I've researched. They're all 3 very good. So that's about it. Hopefully, and we're also hoping we had an electrician come look at this. And we could possibly get away without an engineering firm doing design work. The electrician could possibly do the design work, which would be considerably less expensive than an engineering firm. So once we determine the generator, then the electrician will come look at it and see what has to be done.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dean, but you're required to have a working generator by the DNR?
We are
There.
required by the DNR for emergency power that will power our plant. The new generator you're getting is 750 kilowatts. Our current one is 250 kilowatts. And it doesn't actually run the entire plant. If we have an outage, it runs what needs to be run, bare minimum. So it's long overdue. It is, and the biggest thing that we have a manual transfer switch that we need to do if the power does go out. So you have to go into this, you're not in the box, but on the outside of the box, there's a big lever you pull and it sounds like a gun went off inside the box. I don't feel that's all that safe. We've only had to do it once. So the new one would have an automatic transfer switch, so we wouldn't have to, you wouldn't have to come into work if you didn't have, it would just automatically transfer. And B, it's much safer. So,
Is this generator outside in its own enclosure, or is it in a protected building area?
it's outside in its own enclosure.
And the tank is
The
integral?
fuel tank is underneath it. Yeah, it sits on top of the fuel tank. I'm assuming there would be a collection pit around it. If the tank had an issue, it would go into that tank, concrete. That's what we have where all our other generators are, other than our current one from 1969. Anything else?
How many gallons fuel does it hold? Yeah.
I don't know
I
that.
want to say 150, but I'm not 100. I can get the data for you. It's in our pack. It's in your packet. Each one of the bids.
Have you seen our packets today?
we had a bid from a company, and they gave us all the specs, and I just whited out everything that had to do with that company and sent it to the other companies. This is what we want. So all three of the generators that were bid were exactly the same.
1,000.
Thank you.
1,000-gallon tank? Yeah.
Oh,
Huh.
okay.
Can run for a while. Probably would never fill it full. But anyway, anything else?
I have a question on warranty. What kind of warranty's on it? And then once that warranty's up, is there a service plan that's been put in place and who's going to service it?
I was going to write that down. There's a 2-year warranty, and for a fee, you can get other warranties. I can get them for you, unless Scott has them.
Yeah, it's 2-year basic, and then it's up to 14 or 15,000 for a 10-year adder.
Has that been decided yet on
Yeah,
who's
no.
going to service it or any of that?
They do. The company that we're buying it from has a service tech. They have 2, one in St. Paul, one in Hudson. So they
And then
would
you would just have to figure out if you want to have them service or you service it internally? And what kind
have
of
them
service?
service it as far as routine maintenance. It would
Yeah.
be internal.
Yeah. Okay.
Our mechanics would do that.
Okay.
What you gonna do with the old one?
You want it? I assume we will probably put it on the auction. I'm not sure. Some small community might want to get it for a good price if they can.
Okay. Any other questions?
Or the college might want it. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, looking for an approval of the resolution. Can I get a motion?
A motion.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on the size of the tank? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Resolution passes. Moving on to the reports. And I was actually curious if we get an update on the water tower.
Oh, sure. Love to give you an update on the water tower.
I know that's different than the reports, but I ride by it every week, so.
Yeah, a couple updates. One, Dean gave a report this morning that the water tower and the booster and the north loop are all ready to go. So that is all completed. We're just waiting for some final electrical connections to turn that on. So transformer is, go ahead. So we're kind of waiting on Wayne. So we've morphed from the water being ready to now Wayne.
Yeah, the transformers are here. The electrical equipment, the meter sockets, meter packs for each project has been either on its way or being delayed. So we're in this flux of when the electrician can finish their project. We're tentatively scheduled to get there and get our equipment set this week. So that's kind of where we're at this point.
So we're weeks away from turning it on. So the water portion of this project is 97% complete.
Are those residents out there gonna be notified when it comes online, just in case there's like, I wouldn't assume there's like this surge of pressure, but I mean,
Yes, so Dean has been in touch with the corporate parks, customers that would be affected by this, and they needed pressure reducing valves, and most of them already had the PRVs, pressure reducing valves, installed already, and I think one or two is having them installed. And Dean has been in communication with those customers, notifying them about the higher pressures.
okay, I had needed to install one on my house that I lived in a while ago, because you could take, like, you could strip paint off a car. It was so hot.
Dean, will the residential neighborhoods out there in Sterling Ponds also notice a boost, do you think, or?
So we've talked about doing that. Once the residents, once the PRV is in place and when the water, it's gonna come out of the water at 60 to 65 PSI. So it's not gonna be a huge surge for them. They're currently around 50. This will make a difference as far as, does anybody live in Sterling Ponds? Their flow is gonna be a lot more. They're gonna notice the flow and think it's the pressure is what's gonna actually happen. But we haven't decided yet whether or not, if we're gonna notify them or not. We're either gonna be pleasantly surprised, because we do get.
We'll probably find a way to inform.
We could even, I mean, Facebook maybe, or we could send a letter too. That was something we've been discussing one way or the other, so.
So their pressure will increase?
Their pressure will increase.
Yeah, noticeably or?
Noticeably, I would say.
50 to 65 PSI, so 15 PSI.
15 PSI, but the biggest thing they're gonna notice is flow. They're gonna have a lot more water than they have now. So, fire chief and one of the front desk ladies are gonna be our guinea pigs as to, they both live out there, so they'll let us know.
It will help one thing that you won't see where it'll help is fire flows. So if there's a fire, you're gonna get more pressure, more flow.
Okay,
Yeah, that's the big thing.
all right, thanks. I hijacked
Oh,
that.
and about 3,000 pounds a day is what we ship, or a week is what we ship to Biosolids, so.
Thank you. Okay, and back to you, Kevin.
Financial reports. I was talking to our finance director, Josh Solinger, today, and I asked him if he was going to come tonight, and he says, nope. He said, he says, just convey to the advisory board that he's so happy with the financial positions at the utilities. He said, it's been a hot, dry summer, which is good for electricity usage and water usage and sewer. So he was happy with that. I think on page 41, though, because I wanted you to look at that one, August electric, because these financial reports often are snapshots in time. I think this snapshot in time here was taken right before we paid our WPPI electric bill. Because if you look back a few pages back into the July electric, which is on page 35. So in July, for example, our revenues over expenditures put us at a plus 771,987 as compared to 414,000 the previous year. So we're slightly ahead of the previous year. But when you go to August, it says almost 2.5 million with revenues over expenditures compared to 613,000. I firmly believe by looking at that number, I think our electric bill was close to 1.4 million. So I don't think that has come out of that, is what I'm guessing. So it's probably more like 1 million over this year, revenues over expenditures versus 613,000 last year. That would be more in line. So that's what I'm guessing happened there. But that's positive news. Then moving along to the water for the month of August, we're plus 484 revenues over expenditures compared to 460 last year. Both summers this year and last year have been hot and dry, so they're similar. A few more customers and maybe a little more watering, so we're slightly above. Wastewater, 1.2 million revenues over expenditures compared to 823 last year. That's translating from the water usage. So those are very positive numbers. And then we didn't have as big of projects in the stormwater utility this year, so we're 207, 567 versus 36,000 last year. Again, that's related to there were some bigger projects last year that ate up some of that fund. So So the utilities are sitting in good financial position as of today. And that's what I was supposed to pass along from our finance director. Any questions on that? Utility dashboards, I went through that. Again, our focus on energy programs are getting money back into the community. We're at $45,000 through incentive programs that are trickling back into the community from focus on energy. So that's a positive halfway through the year. Again,
Kevin, related to the focus on energy and the Man Valley expansion out there,
yes.
are they already actively, as I assume that there's companies that are already reaching out, is focus on energy and like WPPI working with them as well to figure that planning to incentivize even more?
Not yet, but they will if once a commercial customer is committed to building and they have a design of a building, they take that design, we get it from them, and then we ship it to Focus Energy, and then they do a design assistance program at no cost. Then they give it back to us, who we give to the customer, and give them both incentives and ideas for energy efficiency. So we're not to that point yet with one of those, but
Okay.
yeah, though they will be going there.
So it doesn't happen on the front end to try and like, we offer this too.
We do say
to-
that. So when we have met with customers, we talk about electric rates, water rates. We're, our wholesale energy provider. We talk about incentive programs and design assistance. Those are part of the discussion when we get in a room with a potential customer.
Okay.
Yes. Green Blocks program, we sit consistently at 16% participation rate. And last week at the WPPI annual meeting, that was put on the board that we were #2 in the country. So I saw Chris Lick was there, so I'm give a little fist pump to that. So that was good. I'm trying to see what else. I think that's really it on the dashboards that I'd like to point out. If I could get right into the utility reports too, and maybe I have a couple things circled and highlighted that I could get into.
Sounds good.
I know Wayne and his crew continue to replace failed services in 1970s vintage cable. We have an underground cable replacement program, and it's funny, Wayne and I were talking, so we get these underground outages, and we know what areas of town and what cable we're going to be replacing based on age, and it never fails. Within that year, we usually get a couple failures on that cable that we know has reached its life expectancy. So it's pretty close, isn't it, Wayne? Every time. It's almost uncanny. You want to talk to that? It's because it's almost, so we know how long it lasts, and it's proven by the failures.
It's almost a fear of talking about it, that theory. It's Kevin alluded to it, but yeah, we know the certain areas, we know approximately how much footage is left from the 1970s. We're less than 10,000 feet left with that vintage cable. So that gets us into the next generation. So that gets us closer to being, causing less outages for our customers locally. So, which is very beneficial not only to them, but to us as well.
So I saw that one on there, and I saw, we see the cable replacement, that's what that's about. We have an active plan to replace aged underground cable. Thanks, Wayne. Also, I wanted to just point out again, we're getting to payment due dates again for utility bills. And this morning it was reported we had 13 that would be facing disconnect today. But I can tell you right now, by the time the end of the week hits here, we will have that whittled down to just a couple again. In July, we disconnected 1, and we made 21 payment arrangements actively. So our customer service staff, again, you could just sit down and just, disconnect and not do much, but we're actively making calls, encouraging people to make payment arrangements, getting them to assistance programs, and it's really great work that goes on behind the scenes to help our customers. So,
related to that, I had a colleague at work that wasn't facing disconnect, but she wanted to give a shout out to the city.
Oh.
She got a phone call, and they said, "Why are you using water every night at 3 a.m.?" And it turns out they had a leak. and they were using water, and like they got it fixed and they reduced it by 40%. And so she was mad at her partner because she thought that there was a leak. Anyway, so she was just floored and stunned that the new technology was working, and like they got a phone call unsolicited, said, "We think you have a leak and your water's running." And so yeah, they're very appreciative of that. So whoever did that, kudos.
Good. We do have some alerts. I know Virgil Johnson goes through those and you can detect them. And sometimes our customer service staff also has time. Then we like to train our customers that if they get on our service, you can actually set those monitors up for yourself as well. So that's really where we want to get people. But in the meantime, if we see irregularities, we do let customers know, and often they get corrected. So not every time, but often. So thanks, Kellen. That's nice.
Any other announcements?
I think that's really it for the dashboards. Let me see. I'm trying to see the next on the utility report too. Maybe because we didn't meet last month. Again, just want to give a shout out and a thank you. There's some really nice pictures in here from the picnic. Many of you were helping out, serving that day for the customer appreciation event in the plaza. It was a beautiful night, and we so appreciate those of you that lent a helping hand. I think it's pretty cool. You do that and give back to the community. I think it was a wonderful event, and it doesn't go on without folks like yourself. So thank you for helping out with that. It was a success. We served almost 1,100 people that night. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other announcements at this time, I will take a motion and a second to move into closed session per Wisconsin State Statutes 1985 1E for the following purposes: of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, to wit, University of Wisconsin River Falls Science Technology Partnership. Can I get a motion?
A motion.
Second.
Um,
So I have
Lene?
I have some handouts I'm going to hand out.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Bartles?